My son was in the hospital, while my wife was with her lover. What I discovered next shattered everything. I was sitting in that damn hospital room, staring at my son, Ethan, hooked up to machines. His little chest rising and falling so weakly, his tiny fingers barely gripping mine. The doctors had said the next 24 hours were critical. His mother should have been here. But she wasn't. Jessica, my wife of 10 years, had chosen to spend this night wrapped up in the arms of another man. Not just any man, Donnie, the guy I once considered a friend. I don't even know what set me off at that moment. Maybe it was the steady beep of the heart monitor. Maybe it was the exhaustion catching up with me after 36 hours without sleep. Or maybe it was the sheer rage clawing at my chest. Whatever it was, my hand was suddenly gripping my phone, and before I could talk myself out of it, I was dialing the hotel where Jessica was staying. "Good evening. Thank you for calling." "Yeah, I need to speak to a guest." "Jessica Carter. Room number?" My voice was sharp, clipped. "I'm sorry, sir, but we can't give out guest information." I exhaled slowly, my fingers tightening around the phone. "Fine. Transfer me to her room, then." A pause. Then a sigh. "One moment, sir." I sat there, my leg bouncing, my free hand gripping my son's fingers. I should have been focused on Ethan. But how could I, when his own mother had abandoned him for a night of pleasure? The phone rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then a click. A groggy, irritated voice answered. "Hello." My heart pounded in my ears. "Jessica." A pause. Then, "David?" Her tone shifted, annoyed, not guilty. Not even guilty. "Get back here. Now." I heard rustling, then a muffled voice in the background. A man's voice. "Donnie." My blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" she asked, voice thick with fake innocence. "Are you serious right now? Our son, your son, is fighting for his life, and you're—" I stopped myself before I said something I couldn't take back. "Get here. Now." She sighed like I was inconveniencing her. "David, I needed a break. I've been so stressed, and you never pay attention to me anymore. You only care about work, about Ethan." I swear, my vision went black for a second. "Are you actually blaming me for this?" She huffed. "I'm not having this conversation right now. You're overreacting." Overreacting. I wanted to scream. But I couldn't. Not with Ethan right there, his small body fragile under the hospital sheets. Instead, I gritted my teeth and spoke as calmly as I could. "Jessica, if you don't get back here right now, don't bother coming back at all." Silence. Then a soft laugh. "David, you're not going to divorce me over one mistake." I hung up. I sat there, my hands shaking. My grip on my phone was so tight my knuckles turned white. One mistake. She really thought this was just one mistake. The beeping of Ethan's monitors grounded me, but just barely. I looked down at him, my little boy, fighting for his life while his mother laughed off her betrayal. That was the moment something inside me broke. I needed proof. Real, undeniable proof. Because Jessica? She was a liar. She would spin this, gaslight me, make herself the victim. She had already started. I needed to destroy any chance of that happening. I opened my laptop, my fingers moving faster than my brain. Bank account? I checked our statements, hotel charges, restaurant bills, expensive gifts. Stuff I hadn't bought. Phone records? Calls to an unknown number, long calls, late at night. Our home cameras? Disabled. She disabled them. I felt sick. This wasn't just some heat-of-the-moment mistake. She planned this. She had been seeing Donnie for months, maybe longer. She had been lying to my face every single day. My hands clenched into fists. Then, as if the universe wasn't done hitting me while I was down, my phone buzzed. "Jessica." I let it ring. Then came a text. "David, don't be dramatic. We'll talk when I get back. Stop acting crazy." Crazy. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. Instead, I took a deep breath, stood up, and kissed Ethan's forehead. He deserved better than this. I deserved better than this. So I did something I never thought I'd have to do. I called my lawyer. I walked out of the hospital room, the weight of everything pressing down on me. My lawyer, Greg, picked up on the second ring. "David? What's going on?" I swallowed hard. "Jessica's cheating on me. I need to know what my options are." Silence. Then a slow sigh. "All right. You want a divorce?" I looked back through the small window of Ethan's hospital room. My son. My entire world. She left him, Greg. He's in critical condition, and she chose to be with him instead of here. Greg didn't hesitate. "We're going for full custody." His words should have given me some kind of relief, but all I felt was anger. I shouldn't have to fight for my own son. His own mother should have chosen him. I need proof, I muttered, already opening my laptop again. We'll get it, Greg assured me. Do you know where she is right now? I clenched my jaw. A hotel. With him. Greg's tone sharpened. Call a private investigator. Get everything. Photos, receipts, whatever you can. Judges don't always care about infidelity, but they'll care that she abandoned her child in the hospital for an affair. I nodded to myself, already looking up PI services. Oh, and David? Greg's voice softened. I know this is hell, but don't let her drag you into a fight. Keep your head straight. Everything you do from here on out matters. I barely heard him. My mind was already moving a mile a minute. Because Jessica had just made a crucial mistake. She thought I'd roll over and let her walk all over me. Not this time. Not ever again, that I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ethan's frail body in that hospital bed. Then I saw Jessica, laughing, wrapped up in some hotel sheets with him. By morning, I had a private investigator on the job. A guy named Mark. Straight to the point, no nonsense. When I explained the situation, he didn't even sound surprised. You're not the first guy calling me from a hospital room, he said. Let's get you some answers. By noon I had them. Photos. Clear as day. Jessica and Donnie at the hotel bar, holding hands. Jessica pulling him in for a kiss at the elevator. Jessica using the hotel card for a 2-night stay. 2 nights. My stomach turned. She hadn't just left Ethan for a quick hookup. She planned to be with him the whole weekend. That's when my phone buzzed. Jessica. I let it ring. Then another text popped up. David, you're being ridiculous. I'll be back tonight. We need to talk. Talk? Talk? I was seconds away from throwing my phone against the wall when another text followed. You know, if you'd given me the attention I needed, maybe this wouldn't have happened. I froze. There it was. The first real lie. The beginning of her rewriting history. I stared at the words, my whole body shaking. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I laughed. Because Jessica didn't realize something. She had just handed me the perfect reason to destroy her. I stared at Jessica's text, shaking my head. She was really going to blame me for this. Not the months of lying. Not the hotel stays. Not leaving our son in the hospital. No, in her mind, this was my fault. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to think. I couldn't just react, not yet. Greg's words echoed in my head. Everything you do from here on out matters. I needed her to dig her own grave. So I replied, You're right. We should talk. Come by tonight. I could almost hear the smugness through the screen when she texted back. Glad you're finally being reasonable. Yeah, sure. I was being reasonable. What she didn't know. By the time she walked through that door, I'd already have a private investigator's report with photos, timestamps, and receipts proving she'd been seeing Donnie for months. Bank statements showing the money she'd secretly pulled from our joint account. A lawyer ready to file for full custody the second I had enough ammo. And most importantly, I had the truth. Jessica thought she could walk in, cry a few fake tears, maybe blame me a little more. She thought I'd beg for answers, that I'd give her a chance to spin some story. She had no idea that by the time she walked through that door, she had already lost. That evening, I sat in the living room waiting. The house was silent except for the ticking of the clock. Jessica was on her way. I had everything laid out, the photos, the bank statements, the call logs. Everything she thought I'd never find. At exactly 7:42 p.m., the front door swung open. Jessica strolled in, purse slung over her shoulder, not a hint of guilt on her face. Just annoyance. Like I was the one causing problems. She barely looked at me as she tossed her keys on the counter. Finally, she sighed. We can have a mature conversation. I didn't say anything. I just watched her. She sat across from me, crossing her legs, flipping her hair like nothing happened. I know you're upset, but you have to understand, David, I needed this. Needed this? Needed to cheat while our son fought for his life? I clenched my fists under the table. Let her talk. Let her dig the hole deeper. She sighed dramatically. You haven't been paying attention to me for months. It's always work, Ethan, work, Ethan. I felt invisible. Donnie actually listens to me. I nodded slowly. Listens to you? She smiled, actually smiled. Yes. He makes me feel special again. Like I matter. I stared at her, my expression blank. Jessica, our son is in the hospital. Her face twisted like I was the one being dramatic. And I told you I needed a break. You don't get it, do you? I've been stressed, David. You act like I don't care about Ethan, but I do. I took a deep breath. Oh really? Then why did you book a 2-night stay with Donnie while Ethan was in critical condition? Her eyes flickered. That's... I cut her off. And why did you disable the home cameras? Why did you drain our account to pay for your little getaway? Her face paled. She wasn't expecting that. I leaned forward. See, Jessica, I did my homework. I have photos, bank statements, call logs. So before you sit there and tell me how stressed you were, maybe you should explain how you planned a whole affair while I was taking care of our son. She blinked. You hired someone? I smiled. You gave me no choice. Silence. Then like clockwork, the waterworks started. David, please, she whimpered, her voice shaking. I made a mistake. I was lonely, I was confused, but I never stopped loving you. I swear I was going to end things with Donnie. I just didn't know how. I laughed. Cold. Hollow. You didn't know how. I grabbed one of the photos and slid it across the table. You seem to know exactly how to be with him. She flinched. Good. David, please don't do this, she whispered, tears running down her face. We have a family. We can fix this. I stood up. No. You destroyed this. And now, you're going to face the consequences. And with that, I dropped the custody papers in front of her. Jessica stared at the custody papers like they were a bomb about to go off. Her eyes darted to me, searching for any sign of hesitation. There was none. I was done. She let out a shaky laugh. David, come on. You're not serious. I folded my arms. Dead serious. Her face twisted, the fake tears drying up instantly. You can't take Ethan away from me. I leaned forward, my voice calm, steady. Unshakable. Watch me. Jessica slammed her hands on the table. You're being cruel. You're doing this to punish me, not because it's what's best for Ethan. I shook my head. No, Jessica. I'm doing this because our son deserves a mother who actually puts him first. And that's not you. She scoffed, standing up so fast her chair nearly toppled over. This is insane. No judge is going to take my son away from me because of one mistake. I raised an eyebrow. One mistake? I gestured toward the pile of evidence. How many mistakes are we talking about here? Because from what I see, this wasn't just a one-time thing. This was months of lying, sneaking around, and taking money from our family. Jessica's breathing became shallow. She was cornered, and she knew it. Then, like clockwork, she switched tactics. She softened her voice, stepping toward me. David, please. Let's talk about this. We can go to therapy. We can fix this. I didn't move. Didn't blink. You can't fix something you burned to the ground. Her lip trembled. I still love you. I tilted my head. Then why did you pick him over your own son? That shut her up. She just stood there, eyes wide, chest rising and falling rapidly. She had no answer. Because deep down she knew I was right. I grabbed my phone and pulled up Greg's contact. You have two choices, Jessica. You can sign those papers and make this easy, or we can go to court, and I'll make sure everyone sees exactly what you've done. Her face crumpled. David, please don't do this. I hit dial, and that's when she completely lost it. The second she saw me calling Greg, Jessica snapped. She lunged for my phone, but I stepped back. Are you crazy? I barked, shoving it into my pocket. Her face contorted with anger. You can't do this to me. You don't get to ruin my life over one mistake. I let out a cold laugh. Ruin your life? Jessica, you did that yourself. She started pacing, her hands tangled in her hair. You're being emotional, David. You're acting like a child. You're just mad, and you want to hurt me. I leaned against the table, arms crossed. Oh, I'm beyond mad, but this? This is me thinking clearly for the first time in a long time. Her eyes darted to the papers again, and then, like she was grasping at straws, she scoffed. You won't win. I raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? Jessica straightened her shoulders, forcing herself to look confident. No judge is going to give you full custody. I'm his mother. I nodded. You're right. Then I smirked. But I have proof that his mother abandoned him in the hospital to sleep with another man. That hit her like a truck. She opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. I needed a break. You don't get it. I was exhausted, and Donnie. I held up a hand. Stop. Just stop. Every time you open your mouth, you make this worse for yourself. Tears welled up in her eyes again, but I wasn't falling for it this time. Then she flipped again. Jessica slammed her hands on the table. You are not taking my son away from me, David. I swear to God, I will fight you tooth and nail. I didn't flinch. Then I hope you've got money for a good lawyer, because I already have the best one. Silence. Jessica's nostrils flared. She was unraveling, and she knew it. Then she did the one thing I never saw coming. She grabbed the custody papers and ripped them in half. There, she spat. What are you going to do now, huh? I just smiled. Cold. Amused. Unbothered. Then I pulled out another copy from my bag and slid it across the table. Her face dropped. Jessica, I said slowly, leaning forward. I came prepared. Jessica stared at the fresh set of custody papers like they had personally betrayed her. Her hands shook. You can't just decide this, David. I'm his mother. I leaned back, calm as ever. And I'm his father. The one who actually stayed. She let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. This is insane. You really think Ethan's better off without me? I didn't hesitate. Right now? Absolutely. Her eyes flared with rage. You are so damn selfish. I blinked. Me? Selfish? Jessica, let's get something straight. You didn't cheat because I was neglecting you. You didn't cheat because you were stressed. I tapped the stack of evidence. You cheated because you're a liar. Because you wanted to. And when our son needed you the most, you left. She clenched her fists. I made a mistake. I tilted my head. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk at the store. You planned this. Jessica opened her mouth, probably to spit out another excuse, but I cut her off. I'm not here to argue. I'm not here to fix anything. You have two options. I held up my fingers. 1, you sign the papers, we handle this quietly, and you get to see Ethan under strict conditions. Her face twisted. And 2, I smirked. 2, I take this to court. I'll make sure the judge sees every receipt, every text, every security cam clip from that hotel. I leaned in. And I will win. Her face paled. I could see the gears turning in her head. She knew she was backed into a corner. Then, like clockwork, she switched tactics again. Jessica's shoulders slumped, and suddenly, her voice was small, shaky. David, please, she reached out, brushing my arm. I don't want to lose my family. I pulled my arm away. You lost your family the second you chose him over us. Tears welled up in her eyes. I still love you. I laughed. A real, genuine laugh. Jessica, you don't even love yourself. Her lip trembled. If you ever loved me, you won't do this. I exhaled. And for the first time, I felt nothing for her. No, Jessica. If you ever loved me, you wouldn't have done this. I slid the pen across the table. Now sign the papers. Jessica just sat there, staring at the papers like they held the weight of her entire world. She knew it was over. For a moment, I thought she might throw another tantrum, rip them up again, or try to beg one last time. But instead, she did something unexpected. She laughed. A bitter, hollow laugh. Wow, she muttered, shaking her head. I never thought you'd actually do this. I just watched her silent. She sniffed, wiping at her eyes. I thought you'd fight for us. I scoffed. You think I should fight for someone who didn't fight for me? For our son? Her mouth opened, but she had no comeback. Instead, she picked up the pen with shaking fingers. This is going to destroy me, she whispered. I didn't blink. You should have thought of that before you destroyed us. Jessica swallowed hard, then, without another word, she signed. The moment the ink touched the paper, I felt something inside me release, like I could finally breathe again. She set the pen down carefully, like she was handling a grenade. Then, she looked at me with those same teary eyes, expecting me to crack, to soften. But I didn't. Because this was the last time she'd ever manipulate me. Jessica exhaled shakily. So what now? I stood up, grabbed the papers, and tucked them into my folder. Now, you leave. Her eyes flickered with something, shock, hurt, maybe even regret. But I didn't care. I walked to the door and opened it, stepping aside. Go. She hesitated, then slowly stood. As she walked past me, she stopped at the doorway. David, she whispered. I didn't respond. I just stared straight ahead, waiting. Finally, with a quiet sigh, she stepped out. And just like that, Jessica was gone. I locked the door behind her and leaned against it, closing my eyes. For the first time in months, I felt at peace. Because I had won. And now, Ethan and I could finally move forward, without her.